future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
NATO says it's ready to retaliate if it's determined damage to any member nation's infrastructure was done maliciously as it investigates the cause of key gas pipeline leaks.
In a statement, NATO ambassadors stressed that any deliberate attack to critical infrastructure would be, quote, met with a united and determined response. This comes after damage to 2 gas pipelines off Denmark and 2 lines for would-be member Sweden in international waters in the Baltic Sea. NATO says that all available information currently points to the leaks being deliberate acts of sabotage, causing risks to shipping and substantial environmental damage. Some European officials and energy experts have said that Russia is likely to blame for any sabotage, as it directly benefits from higher energy prices and economic anxiety throughout Europe. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
6 Republican-led states are suing the Biden administration in an effort to halt the plan to forgive student loan debt for tens of millions of Americans, accusing it of overstepping executive authority. The family of a young woman killed in 1999 is appealing the release of the young man who had been convicted of her murder.
A lawyer representing Young Lee, the brother of Heyman Lee, files a notice to appeal a judge's decision to vacate the murder conviction of Adnan Syed. It doesn't list a basis for the appeal, but says the family was denied the right to meaningfully participate in the hearing. Heyman Lee died by strangulation in 1999. Syed, her 17-year-old ex-boyfriend, was arrested, convicted in 2000, and sentenced to life in prison. Released last week after the Baltimore City State's attorney cited new evidence in the case. Reps saying their responsibility is to ensure that justice is done and the right person is held accountable. Prosecutors have 30 days to decide if Syed will be retried, his case becoming the topic of the hit Serial podcast. Kristen Goodwin, Fox News.
Wall Street stocks dropping back to their lowest point since 2020. The Dow losing 458 points. NASDAQ off 314. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Siduos Maasi Guam for 40 amazing years of support for the UOG Endowment Foundation. Through your generous contributions, we have been able to award many student scholarships, help fund college programs, and facilitate capital improvement projects at the University of Guam. As we celebrate this milestone occasion, we look forward to your continued partnership and many more years of collaboration with our island community. Viva UOG Endowment Foundation.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning Mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all 3.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. You are listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG 93.3 FM. My name is Jose, and you know you're listening to Tall Tales because it is 4 o'clock, 4:07 to be exact, and I just read the Second Amendment from the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments of the Constitution of the United States of America. Woohoo! Let's go to Jimmy Kani. And we have a report on the state of the editorials here on Guam. It doesn't look good. We've had weeks of, or a couple of weeks of me taking, sitting in place for Bob Klitzkie and reading basically feel good, could have been press releases. This one is no different, coming out from the Pacific Daily News. It's supposed to be a celebration of tourism showing progress, but it also is a commercial. It's a commercial for an airlines. And I'm just going to read the headlines. Jeju Air celebrates 10 years on Guam. Tourism showing progress. Well, you know, anything coming off of the pandemic is going to be progress. I'm not sure.
Yeah, more seats coming into Guam is progress.
Yeah, it's progress, but, you know, it's what is it really? I mean, we are seeing an increase in traffic and activity in Tumon, but again, we're coming off of zero, ghost town. And a lot of that traffic that I saw over the weekend, last weekend, or just on Friday, was mostly local stuff, which is good also. A lot of galas and events happening. I was at a 50th anniversary for a relative, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, but back to our Jimmy Cutney. Come on, guys, help us out here. I'll even say this. I read Mike Bavacqua's column today, Cultural Contrasts in Funerals, and I read it and I was like, pretty cool article, not controversial. It actually follows along the lines of what my mindset of what culture is, whether it be something that you practice or your family's practiced 10 years, 20 years down the line, or just began even 5 years ago, or something that you know that's happened for hundreds of years. But I looked at this and went, come on, Miguel, we need something controversial. Stop making us happy here. But every now and then, you know, can't win them all. But
there's no mention of there was no editorial on the $2 billion a year for the next 7.
What was that? $2 billion
what was it,
for the next 7?
The commander, Naval Forces Marianas came out and said $1.5 to $2 billion a year. That the buildup is going to be
no editorial.
Well,
nothing.
It's almost
Writes
good
itself?
enough to eclipse the tourism industry.
They could. No need for it. We have the military. We have the buildup.
But we won't have the jobs.
But where is it going, though? Well, we're going to get the revenue, right, of the...
Oh, but all the people that are in the tourism industry won't have jobs.
Yeah.
The ones that... And then there'll be fewer hotels to have our local events.
Well, they talked about, you know, if we want to go in the hotel industry or what to do with those hotels. There was a little bit of chatter. I think it was on Ray's show about where to build homes or centers for the Manamco on the island. And I know we have that little village there in Tumon. But I'm saying build up. I've seen a lot of high-rise retirement homes. Just take over the hotels.
As long as you can maintain the elevators.
Yeah, that's well, you know. But, yeah, so that's Jimmy Cutney. It is what it is, which isn't that great today. So let's just get to the card. Okay. Today on the card, of course, we have Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism, where the rice is not red, the rice is orange, but pushback tells us that the rice is really red, and how dare this colonist tell us that the rice is orange. It's always been red. But this, again, is not about the rice. It's not about the person calling it orange or red. It's not about the color. It's about the narrative. And so we will always find these examples of systemic racism everywhere these days. It's becoming so predictable sometimes that you don't know if it's satire or if it's true. And I have a little bit of a systemic racism article. It's not that apparent, but you can glean a little bit out of it. and we'll read it for when we come through the card. Today we have a letter to the editor. I'm going to go Lotz, good old Mr. Dave Lotz, who is an activist in his own right. He talks a lot about environmental issues, military buildup issues. This one is labeled Lotz versus Landlords. I have an article from written by Peggy Noonan called JFK versus Biden. I just put versus Biden just so we can do a contrast of presidents. And since Brandon is the current POTUS, he is our president. Yes, I would not have voted for him, but I would still call him our president, even though I don't think he might be the real Joe Biden that we used to know as far as cognitive skills. He's there. And this is a good one because Peggy writes about the Cuban Missile Crisis and gets a little bit deeper into the mindset of JFK because she gathers a lot of things from transcripts of recordings that JFK made secretly of meetings he had during the missile crisis. So it's pretty good. Anxiety versus the Snowflake Nation, and that's the systemic racism type article that I want to read. It's an editorial, column by a writer named Daniel Henniger. And then finally we have Russians versus Venezuela. Russia versus Venezuela. And there's some interesting things that are happening in Russia right now, including I read an article, or someone sent me an article saying that the U.S. is now telling all citizens to start removing themselves from Russia right now. There's some things that are going on, including Russians are starting to move themselves out of there. But, I want to get to Lotz, Dave Lotz versus Landlords, because he has an article. I mean, he wrote something. I think it is concerning in the sense that it does affect a lot of us, even though some people are homeowners. There are a lot of renters on the island, but this is attached to poverty. This is attached to homelessness. But let me just read it first, and then we'll try to see other people's takes on this. Lots. Military housing allowance skews rent on Guam. One issue out of seemingly too many that politicians apparently avoid during this election season is the exorbitant cost for rental of decent family housing on the island, especially when we know the cause, the military housing allowance. Just recently, a townhouse where I live was advertised to rent for $2,450 per month, which is exactly the same amount as the military housing allowance. Supposedly, the military housing allowance should reflect the current market rental rate. In fact, it has become the market rate. In addition, active duty military personnel receive utility allowance up to $749 per month, which, with energy conservation, means the individual can pocket the difference, thus making money out of a housing subsidy. I'm not sure about that. Wasn't there, I don't know if it was here on Guam, wasn't there someone who got arrested for that or caught doing it?
I think it wasn't that they were pocketing the difference. It was that they were
living
somehow not eligible, or they weren't living in that unit, or something.
They weren't.
So
they weren't sending rent to their landlord because it was like their brother or relative or something. That's what it was. Yeah. Okay. So thus, a year of rent for housing is $29,400. The estimated median Guam family income is $50,000. Therefore, 60% goes to housing even before taxes. Who can afford this without a subsidy? However, the Guam Chamber of Commerce posted an incredible cost of living of only $1,500 per month for unfurnished rental units with utilities of only $350 per month, and that was assessed in September 19th, 2022. Joint Region Marianas forecasts an increase of military family members by 2027 to 25,000, up from 15,000 families. Obviously, there is a growing need for military housing on the island, and the demand is being met outside the fence, especially when on-base family housing has been drastically reduced. Military family housing has just disappeared island-wide at such locations as Naval Computer and Telecommunications Station at South Finnegassen, Anderson South, Naval Air Station, Agana, Nimitz Hill, and at the old Australian Cable Station in Tumon. With more military families coming to Guam, why has the number of on-base units decreased? Could there have been lobbying efforts from the island's business community that resulted in this crisis? We do know that over the years, business representatives have lobbied Washington for the buildup. Being private efforts, we do not know what was discussed. An attempt to obtain information from the Guam Chamber of Commerce on this subject was not responded to. What have our elected leaders done or not done to ensure that more housing units are constructed on base for military families to mitigate the impact on our community? We should have a policy of encouraging or requiring rentals to Guam residents first at affordable rates to take care of our own people first, as the military should be able to increase their family housing on base. During this election time, we should require all candidates to reveal if they rent or finance rental units to military families. I don't know about that.
It's campaign time.
This crisis should be resolved.
You can't say that any other time. I mean, what
right.
difference does it make?
I
I
agree.
mean, nobody asks in February.
Right?
Right.
This crisis should be resolved by the people of Guam acting together for our benefit. Can we? And then he goes to qualify. This is his qualification. Myself and my family do not have rental properties on Guam or elsewhere. So Dave, regular Joe Lotz, is coming across as a concerned citizen. Now, I understand the intent of where he's coming from, but I would assert that the issue is not military housing allowance, because GURA does the same thing. GURA bulks up their allowance to tenants or to applicants, which rivals that, I think, of the military housing allowance, if not even more. And a lot more landlords would also like to rent to GURA housing recipients. So we're not looking at the military as the issue. We're looking at markets, the economy, and landlords who are taking advantage, rightfully so, I think, of what's in front of them, the opportunities they have. The board is lit up right now. There's a lot of people here. I'm going to go to Shepard on this article. Shep, good afternoon. Welcome to Tall Tales. Thanks for calling in.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I was listening very closely, as it is an important topic, and Mr. Lotz has made some valid, indisputable points, but I'm listening closely for his solution. And at the end, he says, the people of Guam get together or something to that effect. But I didn't really hear any hard solutions that he's proposing. And just like he disclosed, I'm going to disclose as well. I rent to military people, but I don't think it's a source of shame or anything. He says, people running for office should say if they do so or not, as if it was something wrong with it. And until the military lower its rates, I don't think there's certainly anything wrong with it. That is a problem, but I'm all ears. As I've only been here 25 years, and my care factor very much is with the common man. I'd like everyone to have decent problems, but I'm out of ideas. And in his article, was there something that I missed about what he's proposing to solve the situation?
The only proposal was like a soft proposal, and that was during this election time, we should require all candidates to reveal if they rent or finance rental units to military families. I'm not sure how much of an impact that would be or what that matters.
That's no solution whatsoever. Once again, but it only insinuates that getting into somebody's personal business as if it was selling dope or something.
Right. And again, a friend of mine who is in realty, had mentioned on a comment somewhere that GURA has the same amount that they give to clients, as far as the military allowance and GURA allowance. They're both competitive to each other, so it's not the military per se.
I agree. I agree very much. I know that to be true. I also know, having to go through the public works process and then the licensing, business licensing, and then you got to jump through the hoops with the military, with all of their checklists, which are even tougher. That the homes are nice and they are worth it. No one's getting gouged here.
Right.
But it's just a matter of what Uncle Sugar has been passing out for so many years. As a matter of fact, Mr. Lotz is correct. It artificially raises the cost for everyone, and it is what it is for the locals. But I'm not ready to say it's not fair. But I am hoping that someone smarter than me can come up with something, anything at all. That's all I have to say.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Shep, and I appreciate your call. Have a great one.
You bet.
All right.
Bye.
We also have a, let me see here. Click on Bruce, who has a comment on the same article. Go ahead, Bruce. Welcome to Tall Tales.
Well, as a real estate appraiser and a member of the Guam Association of Realtors and of various other groups about real estate, Mr. Lotz is somewhat misinformed. The first part is, military rental does not completely capture the market. The comment about GORA is good because GORA has recently upped their what they're giving. So that would give you to think that the Guam Chamber of Commerce may be completely off base with this $1,500 with $350 for utilities, which is in both cases is probably wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you that.
Military. The military, as of 20 years ago, started outsourcing base services like housing maintenance and things like that. And a lot of those older housing units were just old. In other words, they weren't worth keeping, so they tore them down. So, now, as far as requiring military members to live on base, really?
I don't, yeah.
You don't want their money out in town?
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, somewhere along here you got to go, let's not cut our noses despite our face, man. Come on.
Yeah, and restricting people to base is not a, yeah.
A lot of times that other people don't have it. What I'm saying is there are rentals available at lower rates for people that don't qualify for the subsidies. They do exist. They're not great, but they do exist.
Right, right. Well, I appreciate your experience on this. This is interesting. Like I said, my title on the card was Dave Lotz versus landlords, and not the military. I think. Yeah,
exactly.
That's where you should be looking at.
Yeah. I would have to question his motivation behind this letter.
Right, right, absolutely. That's a good question. That's a good question. Yep.
It sounds like, look, I think I'm hearing, sorry, guys, if it offends anybody, but a Democrat who wants to control everything.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's the...
look, I am a dyed-in-the-wool Republican. I want the government out of my face.
Right, I hear you. I hear you. It's about free markets right now, and that's the thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the point. Look, I'll put it this way. I'm with a couple of different groups. Guam Real Estate Investors, a Facebook group that gets together and talks about stuff. I recently talked to a guy who had bought a 30-unit complex, renovated it, and rented it out to only Section 8. That was doing so well, he bought the 20-unit one next door, renovated it, and started renting it out. He said, look, GORA is getting almost as good as military. It's easier to qualify, and if you have on-site maintenance, you're not going to get ripped off.
Right, and there's, it's funny. I'm a military brat, and I was looking at some of the GORA housing areas, and they reminded me of living on base, because you have a certain standard you have to keep, or you're going to get kicked out. Just like living on base. So, Bruce, I want to thank you for your call. We got some other people on the green room to comment on this, and have a great day. Thanks for calling in. Bye bye.
All right, take care.
Good afternoon, CW on housing allowance. What say you?
Well, I can tell you that it's one of those issues of better to let people think you're an idiot than to open your mouth and prove it. The housing allowance is given to the military. $2,205 is for a single military person. The $24.50 is for a married couple. A lot of the problems out here, the reason those rates are that high is because the local populace is charging that much for people to rent them. If you want to rent a Gura, you get pretty much the same amount. I'm not military. I don't get a housing allowance. I have to pay out of pocket for all of my housing, and it was hard to find a place because anything that's less than $2,200 a month is usually because they failed the Gura or the military housing inspection, and they don't want to pay to upgrade it, so they rent it at a cheaper cost. And another thing that people don't realize is a lot of this is driven, like the last caller said, by investors, but it's not just local investors, it's also by foreign investors. There's a lot of property that's owned by China that they know they can come in and buy, and Uncle Sam's going to give them a check every month.
I live in Jigo, and that's exactly a fact. My neighborhood is full of housing owners that aren't from here or originally not from here.
And the complaints that this guy has, you know, they're half-assed at best. And when he says that the military should probably just live on base, I used to be on the base housing when I was stationed here 20-some-odd years ago.
Okay.
They weren't great then. They tore them down. They couldn't rebuild them because of the location of the nearest commissary for most of them. It was an environmental thing that they did. And he would probably be one of the first ones to step up and complain if they did suddenly decide they were going to put everybody in barracks or put them back into base housing and take that money away from the local economy. Probably be one of the first ones to get up there and complain, saying, well, it's not fair. The military, the evil military, is taking money out of our pockets every month.
Yeah. Probably, but I'm going to go with what he wrote in this article. I do know a little bit about Dave Lotz and what he goes for, but I understand what you're saying here. But there is something more than just it's the military allowance. But CW, I appreciate the call. We got one more person in the green room, and then
one more quick thing.
Go ahead.
When he made the comment about the utility allowance, the military gets a set amount for military or for utilities, but that's to cover everything: electricity, internet, telephone, cable, water, sewer, the whole 9 yards. And if just the fact that he was coming out there and saying that, you know, they're pocketing any kind of difference, there is no difference at 30 cents per kilowatt hour fuel surcharge.
Right.
And to come out and accuse the military of out and out fraud, you know, that's kind of a stupid comment to make.
That's a huge accusation. Yeah, that is huge. I can tell you, when I was growing up as a kid, my dad was, active duty for, I think, 30 years, almost 30 years. And we weren't exactly rich, but I can say we kind of lived like impoverished people. We didn't have a lot of money, but even pocketing 50 cents would have been good. I want to thank you for your call, and take care.
Have a good weekend.
All right, you too. Shep, is this round two?
Yeah, it is round two.
No problem. Go
all
ahead.
All good thoughts. And, CW hit on a couple of good points there. You know, if you can't pass muster on the inspections, or you don't want to put up the money, you go substandard and something less.
Yeah.
But I'd like to stand up for my military, because they do the best that they can, and I am certain that if base housing numbers drop below a certain level, and someone might correct me later, but let's say 95%, I've seen it happen before, they will start recalling.
Oh, Shep, I think your call dropped. Okay, listen, we're going to go to a break.
Yeah,
and,
let me go ahead and finish his thought, because he was telling me about it before.
Okay.
I put him on hold.
Sure thing.
He said that when the demand for housing, base housing, these are families. When the numbers of applicants drops, and then they start getting a number of vacancies, significant number of vacancies, then they do recall. They tear up contracts. Those contracts they give the allowance because they don't have enough, and they're encouraging people to come to Guam as accompanied. They want Guam to be a higher value for the military experience, a better posting than the reputation in the past.
I think that might be Shep on the line. Let's see if he concurs or has anything else to add. Shep, is this you?
Yeah, this
Okay.
is me back, and he was doing a pretty good job there. But what I was saying was, they manage things to where if they have too many vacancies on base, for example, when they open up a new housing area, they will recall, and they have ability to tear up contracts. There's always a military clause, and so rest assured, the government's just not throwing money around willy-nilly. There is a thought process behind it. We may disagree on how much they give out. And I also lived in base housing as a kid, and it was a dump. But the last thing I will say is, if the government was in charge of the beach, they'd run out of sand. I'm sure of it. So whenever what they're doing is outsourcing, do we want to build more housing and maintain it, or just throw money at the problem? It's a wise financial decision, because they can only build so much. And as the military expands and contracts, that's how they manage it. If it gets too much vacancy on base, they can recall people. So there is a method behind the madness, and someone might even call in and tell you what that number is. It's pretty high. It's like 95% that they have to maintain before they said, I'm sorry, you cannot live off base.
Right. Okay. All right. That's pretty good. But thanks again for calling in, Chip. I won't count this as number 3. All right. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Just a final thought here, and I have no intent to beat up on Dave Lotz for this, because he supported an opinion. However, there is a part in here that made a confusion of what he is opining about, or what his issue is, because he made a comment, and somebody pointed out, about a utility allowance. At the end said the individual can pocket the difference. With energy conservation, the individual can pocket the difference, thus making money out of a housing subsidy. And I'm like, why would he comment on that? His issue is not the individual. His issue is with the military allowance. So would it be better for the landlord to drop the rental price, even though he knows that the family has an allowance, so that the individual or the family can pocket that money? Does he have an issue with the military having? I'm not too sure why he made that comment.
Prices are set by demand, and by the supply of housing. If there was a glut of housing that qualified for both GORA and military, those prices would drop, and the military allowance might fall.
Mm-hmm.
But
I'm talking more to this comment here, because
but that's just utilities, and
it has nothing to me. It has nothing to do with utilities. It has to do with what does it matter what the individual is doing with that allowance if they don't have to spend all of it. So is it really an issue with the military, or is it really an issue with housing? And that you can glean something off of that, to be sure, because it just seems a little bit. I think, Dave, if you did your homework a little bit more and commented on GORA also, and try to make it more of a housing market issue, I think you would have more of a something I think we can really converse on, instead of going after the military on this. Let's go to a break, Daryl, and we'll be right back with Tall Tales here on KUSG 93.3 FM. My name is Jose Martinez. Don't go away.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
It's back. Sunday, October 2nd, the Guam Army National Guard presents the GSPN Imas Metgood Strongman Competition. Come to the Paseo grounds and find out who will be the 2022 Strongest Man and Strongest Woman. Can Big Tonsalas and Brittany Pareda defend their titles? Watch the strongest on island take on the Pacific Unlimited Outrigger Lift, the Pacific Tire CTE Tire Flip, ITNE's Pro Pull, the Michelob Ultra Keg Toss, and Paradise Fitness's Tombstone Walk. And you got to be there for the Triple J truck pull. Food and drinks will be on sale. All proceeds going to the Tasa Canoe Builders. The GSPN Imas Metgood competition, Sunday, October 2nd, starting at noon. Special thanks to the stations of choice broadcasting. That's Boss 104, Star 101, and The Point.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Welcome back. Thank you for joining us here on Tall Tales. It is 4:38. We went a little past the bottom of the hour. That's okay. It looks like it that letter hit a button for other people as well. I think it's a good conversation to make. I would suggest not to. The housing on Guam is the issue. I can see how one would think the military is the biggest factor, but there's other factors involved too. And like you said, Daryl, the market drives rental prices.
That's right. If there was a glut of housing in this category, then they'd be competing against each other by price.
What we don't see here on Guam are high rises, and I don't know if that has to do with the cost of it. I know that hotels have to have there's certain stringent guidelines, right, because of the earthquakes and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah,
but
expensive.
We have hotels. Why can't we have, at least 14 stories, 15 stories of apartment?
We can.
Yeah,
we can, and
that might have to be the next one.
We've seen hotels converted to condos.
That's true. That's true. Next on the card here, I'm going to go with the Russians versus Venezuelans, only because there's a commentary here on see, where did this come from? I can't even remember where I pulled this out of. Russians will soon discover Biden's open borders. The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. And just real quick, I use this opportunity to write a title called "The Russians Are Coming ... to Guam." Remember when we were talking about those refugees out of Afghanistan for a little bit? We did house refugees from Vietnam after there was a exodus from there. The
Kurds,
Afghans didn't come here. The Kurds we had, but Guam is not unfamiliar with Russians coming to Guam. We just had maybe 6 years ago or 7 years ago visa waivers for Russians to come here, and there was a lot of them.
That's right.
In fact, they didn't just come here for a couple of days. They came here for weeks at a time. So they are not unfamiliar to us here on the island, and they're not apparently Guam is not unfamiliar to Russians, even though Russia is a huge country, and I'm sure there's pockets of people who don't even know that Guam exists. But
Americans,
like Americans, right? So this one is Russians Are Coming. The Russians Are Coming. That was the title of a 1960s Cold War smash hit comedy film before my time. It was about the fictional grounding of a Russian-Soviet submarine off of Gloucester Island, population 200, along the New England coast. Chaos breaks out when the captain sends an armed 9-man crew ashore to help in freeing his vessel, and the people think it's an invasion. After much comedy and confusion, peace and harmony break out, and the islanders and the Russians become friends. When the U.S. sends two F-101 Voodoo jets to bomb the departing Russians, the townfolk take to the water and surround the sub with their small boats. The jets, not wanting to harm fellow Americans, break off the attack to the cheers of the islanders, and everybody is happy. It was only a movie about a mock invasion, but it got rave reviews and was even shown in Moscow. Probably thought it was a documentary. Now the Russians are coming again, and this time it's not so funny. This time it's for real. And they will not be seeking sanctuary or asylum on Martha's Vineyard or any other imaginary island off the coast of Massachusetts. The film was shot in California. They'll be coming across the open Mexican border like everybody else in the world is doing. These are the untold number of Russians who are fleeing their country because of Vladimir Putin's disastrous invasion of Ukraine. It is a costly war, and he is losing it, which accounts for his recent bluster about unleashing tactical nuclear weapons, as well as calling up 300,000 or more young men to fight in the war. Ukraine to him is what Vietnam was to the United States, only compressed in time to months rather than years. And like some young Americans, rightly or wrongly, who who fled to Canada to avoid being drafted to fight in an unpopular war, so too are young Russians abandoning Russia to avoid being sent to fight in the Ukraine. Also, like the thousands of anti-Vietnam War demonstrators who risked arrest protesting the Vietnam War, so too are Russian anti-war protesters being arrested and jailed in Moscow and St. Petersburg. While thousands of Russians have fled or are fleeing, it is not an easy thing to accomplish. Russians seeking to avoid being drafted to fight are flying to only 4 countries that still have direct plane connections: Serbia, Turkey, Georgia, and Armenia. The price of one way has soared. Still, 50,000 Russians have fled to Serbia since the war began. Another 40,000 fled to neighboring Georgia, where no visa is required. The day after Putin made his war announcement, there was a 6-mile backup of cars on the Georgia border made up of Russians seeking to get out. Meanwhile, to the north, the 3 Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, closed their borders, as did Finland, saying they will not grant asylum to Russians fleeing mobilization. And to the southeast, more Russians are crossing into Mongolia. If Joe Biden was as concerned with border security as the 3 tiny Baltic states and Finland are, the U.S. would have closed its southern border long ago. Instead, the country is dealing with the economic, social, and political fallout from the influx of 2 million immigrants who have crossed the southern border illegally, let alone the thousands of getaway criminals and terrorists who are now roaming the country. But he is not, nor the Democrats. To them, illegal immigrants are a political windfall who deserve free stuff, as well as driver's licenses and the right to vote. So who wouldn't want to break into America, especially when there are no enforceable laws preventing it? I'd come too if I was not already here. Not that the Russians have not already been coming across the border, along with immigrants from around the world. They have, but it has only been a trickle. Now it will be a flood. The Russians are coming. This time to stay, and it sure beats Mongolia.
They're not going to Venezuela?
They're not. Well, they have to fight the Venezuelans because those are the other refugees or people who are fleeing their country. That's why I picked that Venezuela's versus not that they're not going to Venezuela. But it is interesting because it's a group of immigrants or refugees that I think people weren't expecting. And Russian refugees, you know, they talked about going to Mongolia. These might be Russians that people wouldn't think are Russians, you know. The ones that have the more, I guess, stereotypical Asian features instead of the Slavic or the northern features. And that's probably why they're going that way through Mongolia. I don't know how many of them.
It's the closest border.
Right. True. Into southeast Asia.
The latest has been that the ones who are fleeing are the ones who are the most educated, have the most options, have a car they can get into, they can afford a plane ticket.
Have money.
They have money, and they're leaving.
That was similar to a lot of the
options.
Vietnam veterans. Immigrants that came out here. A lot of them had the cash and the liquidated funds, or not the liquidated funds, the solid
Gold.
funds to make it out here.
Gold.
So that would be interesting. It'd be interesting to see how that turn of events is going to affect the United States. I'm not sure if there are any pathways to Guam, maybe via Saipan. Hitch a ride with a Chinese immigrant. I don't know. But we've seen them here. We still have some, I guess, some Russian visitors who are seeking asylum here on Guam as well,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how much communication they have with some of their family and friends back home in their home country. But it's interesting. We got a lot of people coming, and it's not just the South Americans or the Hispanic, non-American, non-citizen, non-nationals coming over the border. It's going to be a great many different kind of people. I see that's Frenchie. Is that correct? Oh, he has his headphones off. Just rattle on a little bit because I think he's going to be coming in. All right. And I might go into the next one here, JFK versus Biden. Was that Frenchie?
Yes, it was. And he's in the middle of something, but he wants to call back a little later when he's done with what he's working
Tell
on.
him to call in after the halftime show. No
That's
problem.
that's what he said.
Okay, very cool.
He'll be calling because he wants to talk about the
latest
the migration.
Okay,
issues.
very good, very good. And Frenchie seems to know a little bit about it, a lot more than I would. This is kind of leading me into Peggy Noonan article. I read her stuff with a grain of salt because she's kind of the softy conservative to me, very middle of the road. But she has some great stuff, and I really appreciate this one because this is a history lesson as well. She wrote a column entitled "Enduring Lessons of the Cuban Missile Crisis," and this comes into play. And I don't know how much of a crazy person. I don't know his first name, Khrushchev. He was at the time, or how they made him out to be. He was the leader of Russia at the time, the president, or the
Yeah. He
okay.
took off his shoe and pounded it on
That's
the podium
right.
at the UN.
That's right. And I don't know how he stands up or how he's compared to Vladimir Putin, but this one she analyzes a little bit of what happened back in the 60s. In October, it'll be 60 years since the Cuban Missile Crisis, which has been called the most dangerous crisis in recorded history. The Soviet Union had secretly placed missiles in a base in Cuba. The U.S. discovered them through secret aerial photographs. What would President John F. Kennedy do less than 2 years into his presidency and 1.5 since the botched Bay of Pigs invasion? It is a famous story told in books, movies, and monographs, but it bears another look and deeper reflection as Vladimir Putin threatens nuclear use in Ukraine. What can we learn from what happened 60 years ago? The JFK Library websites have transcripts, tapes, and documents of White House deliberations as the crisis played out. What strikes you as you read and listen is the desperate and essential fact that they were groping in the darkness to keep the world from blowing up. From the transcript of a White House meeting the morning of October 16th, the first day of the 13-day crisis. Secretary of State Dean Rusk. Mr. President, this is of course, serious development. It's one that we all of us had not really believed the Soviets could carry this far. JFK asked why the Russians would do this. General Maxwell Taylor suggested they weren't confident of their long-range nuclear weapons and sought placement of shorter-range ones. Rusk thought it would be that Nikita Khrushchev lives under fear of U.S. nuclear weapons in Turkey and wants us to taste the same anxiety. U.S. officials knew where most of the missiles and launchers were in Cuba, but not where the nuclear warheads were, or even if they've arrived. Should the U.S. attack the bases? If so, should it warn the Soviets first? And this is JFK. Warning them, it seems to me, is warning everybody. And obviously, you can't sort of announce that in 4 days from now. You're going to take them out. They may announce within 3 days they're going to have warheads on them. If we come and attack, they're going to fire them. Then what do we do? You can hear the tension in the voices, and you can hear them because JFK secretly taped the deliberations, as he taped many conversations. No one knows why. Historians have evinced a pronounced lack of interest in that question. But it's good that he did because it allows us to see decision-making played out at the highest level and with the highest possible stakes. Seemingly, small things tell you worlds about general mood and approach. When JFK called to brief Harold Macmillan, the British Prime Minister said it might encourage the Soviets to withdraw the weapons if action were taken to help the Russians save face. He offered to immobilize our Thor missiles here in England temporarily. JFK said he'd bring the idea forward. This was the West working to diffuse things and encourage constructive action. Conceivably, were it discovered, Macmillan could have paid a political price for this at home, and he never mentions that. As the political scientist Graham Allison has noted, JFK was focused on big strategic nuclear weapons. He didn't know and couldn't have known that Khrushchev had already sent smaller tactical nukes to Cuba under a Soviet commander who was on the ground there. If JFK had bombed the missile sites instead of using naval blockades and creative diplomacy, he might have unleashed what he was trying to prevent. In the end, of course, Khrushchev withdrew the missiles. JFK, who had previously admitted to him that the Bay of Pigs was a mistake, repeated a promise not to invade Cuba. He secretly promised, too, that the U.S. would get its missiles out of Turkey. But the story doesn't end there. Let's go to our last break before the top of the hour, and I'll continue this when we return. You're listening to Tall Tales on 93.3 FM. The Point. Don't go away.
Attention all passengers. This is your pre-boarding announcement for flight UOG EF40, scheduled for departure on Saturday, October 8th for our gala destination at the Dusitani Guam Resort. Passenger check-in time is 5 p.m. Your onboard entertainment will be a reunion of the casuals with Jesse and Ruby. For ticketing information, please call our agents at 671-735-2957. We thank you for choosing to fly with the UOG Endowment Foundation. Enjoy your flight with Triton's Transforming the World.
Tell me about it, stud.
Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Festival is back on Saturday, October 22nd. We rockin' and rollin' at the Dusitani Guam Resort from 2 to 10 p.m. Bring your friends and come dressed in your best grease costume to win up to $500 in cash and prizes. So bust out those leather jackets and 50-style outfits as we party the night away at Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Fest. Don't be a square. Get your tickets now at craftbeerfestguam.com or cruise on by any 76 Circle K location. Now that's cool, baby.
All right, and we're back. I am reading a column by Peggy Noonan recounting what happened during the Cuban Missile Crisis, coming from the transcripts of recordings that President John F. Kennedy did, secretively too. I'm going to repeat just this last paragraph and then go into the rest of the paragraph, the last one I read. In the end, of course, Khrushchev withdrew the missiles, and JFK, who had previously admitted to him that the Bay of Pigs was a mistake, repeated a promise not to invade Cuba. He secretly promised, too, that the U.S. would get its missiles out of Turkey. 8 months later, in June 1963, Kennedy gave a speech in which he described how the crisis had convinced him that the entire Cold War must be rethought. His speechwriter, Ted Sorensen, told me years later, that it was the most important speech he had ever worked on. I saw in his eyes he meant the greatest, and he was right. The nature of war has changed, Kennedy said. We can't continue with great powers having huge nuclear arsenals and possibly resorting to their use. A single nuclear weapon contains almost 10 times the explosive force delivered by all the Allied air forces in the Second World War. A major nuclear exchange could extinguish the world. To believe peace is impossible is to believe war is inevitable, and if that is so, then mankind is doomed. We need not accept that view. No government is so evil that its people must be considered as lacking in every virtue. America and the Soviet Union are almost unique among the major world powers in that we have never been at war with each other. If we can't resolve all our differences, we can at least turn to common interests. For in the final analysis, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's future. And we are all mortal. Importantly, there is this. Above all, while defending our own vital interests, nuclear powers must avert those confrontations which bring an adversary to a choice of either a humiliating retreat or a nuclear war. Choosing that path would be evidence of a collective death wish for the world, and that is why U.S. military forces are disciplined in self-restraint and our diplomats instructed to avoid unnecessary irritants and purely rhetorical hostility. He said talks would soon begin in Moscow towards a comprehensive nuclear test ban treaty. He vowed to act as if it was already in place. Kennedy's insight that nuclear weapons changed the facts of human history was shared by Ronald Reagan. Like Kennedy, he respected Russia's nuclear arsenal. Reagan said privately and publicly that a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. He had been shocked years before his presidency to spend a day at NORAD and absorbed all the implications of the doctrine of mutual assured destruction. As president, his way would be stark candor coupled with increased strength and no sudden moves. Between 1982 and 1985, 3 Soviet leaders died. But when Reagan got a partner he could work with, Mikhail Gorbachev, he attempted at Reykjavik in 1986 to abolish nuclear weapons outright. Later, they achieved a historic arms control agreement. What lessons might diplomats infer from all this? Don't be afraid of groping your way in the darkness. Stay fearful of and focused on nuclear weapons. Take chances, and don't be so sure of continued good luck. We've been lucky for 77 years. We're used to the worst things not happening, but it could and may. You have to keep trying, and you can't rest on luck built by others. And that is from Peggy Noonan. You're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG 93.3 FM. My name is Jose Martinez. We're going to the big halftime show at the top of the hour. It is now 4:58. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Ian's second U.S. landfall hours away. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The reformed hurricane projected to come ashore about midday just to the northeast of Charleston, South Carolina. At Category 1 strength, not nearly as powerful as its Wednesday's landfall in Florida, but still dangerous.
Forecasters warn parts of the state could see dangerous storm surge, torrential rain, and tropical storm force winds up to 60 miles per hour. The National Weather Service forecaster said if Ian remains a hurricane when it comes to South Carolina, it will be the first one to make landfall in the state in 6 years.
Fox's Jessica Rosenthal in Florida. Search and rescue missions continue.
There have been more than 700 confirmed rescues, and there's likely many more than that that will be confirmed as more data comes in. People have been rescued from places like Fort Myers Beach, Sanibel, Marco Island, as well as the Barrier Islands in Charlotte County.
Governor Ron DeSantis, the number of fatalities from the storm has reportedly reached double digits. Stunning devastation in the southwest part of the state.
Towns like Punta Gorda here are very famous for their communities of prefabricated or modular homes or mobile homes, and they don't hold up well in severe weather. There are a number of homes without their roofs, practically every other one in some cases. Those roofs are not necessarily far away. They're just not on top of the homes. They're twisted up in piles on front yards or in driveways or wherever they came to rest. Across some of these roadways, there are communities under construction, partially built homes where the roof rafters are now in splinters.
Fox's Evan Brown in Punta Gorda. House of Representatives Friday will vote on a stopgap spending bill to keep the government operating after the fiscal year expires at midnight. The Senate passed it yesterday. Wall Street back in the red Thursday. The Dow down 458 points. NASDAQ lost 314. America is listening to Fox News.
Attention all passengers. This is your pre-boarding announcement for flight UOG EF40. scheduled for departure on Saturday, October 8th for our gala destination at the Dusatani Guam Resort. Passenger check-in time is 5 p.m. Your onboard entertainment will be a reunion of the casuals with Jesse and Ruby. For ticketing information, please call our agents at 671-735-2957. We thank you for choosing to fly with the UOG Endowment Foundation. Enjoy your flight with Triton's Transforming the World.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
There are now 6 states challenging the legality of President Biden's order to cancel student loan debt.
Arkansas Attorney General Leslie Rutledge leads the challenge to the White House plan to forgive up to $20,000 in student debt. She says President Biden has crossed the line.
The Department of Education is required under the law to collect the balance due to these loans. President Biden does not have the authority to override that.
The president said in his August announcement that it fulfills a campaign promise. Rutledge claims the president is illegally invoking the HEROES Act, using the pandemic as a national emergency to justify financial relief, when in a recent interview, the president declared the pandemic over. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Former executives and directors of Pacific Gas and Electric have agreed to pay $117 million to settle a lawsuit over devastating 2017 and 2018 California wildfires sparked by the utility's equipment. The lawsuit claimed the defendants neglected their duty to ensure the utility's equipment wouldn't kill people. In Alabama, inmates are refusing to do their prison jobs.
Thousands of Alabama inmate prisoners are refusing to work in prison kitchens, laundry rooms, and other facilities. Many are upset about lockup living conditions for the state's 20,000 prisoners. They're also demanding sentencing reform. The Department of Corrections has now cut down on meal service. Prisoners are only getting 2 bagged meals a day as opposed to 3. Activists say it's retaliation for the strike, but prison officials say the reduced rations are a result of a prison labor shortage due to the inmates' refusal to work. Tom Graham, Fox News.
South Korea, U.S., and Japanese warships have launched their first anti-submarine drill in 5 years after North Korea renewed its ballistic missile tests with a submarine-launched missile last week. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show. Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning Mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all 3.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Shop and Win is back at Micronesia Mall. Beginning August 6th, shop and redeem receipts for a chance to win instant prizes from Burger King or Foot Locker, or receive a grand prize entry form for our first raffle drawing on November 12th for your chance to win a 2022 Toyota Corolla LE courtesy of Atkins Scroll Toyota. Plus, 10 lucky runners-up will receive a $250 gift certificate from Goodwin Travel and Tour for tickets for Philippine Airlines.
Shop more, win more.
Only at Micronesia Mall. Terms and conditions apply.
showing the big halftime show and the Rogues gallery of tailgaters sporting their I'm a Tailgater t-shirt, which you can obtain by going to thepoint.gu, clicking on the link with the beard and the shirt, and you will get to the local link and order your t-shirt, all the way from child sizes to ultra large adult sizes. Adult child sizes like mine. I think mine is a 3X. They might even go up to 4X. You might have to pay extra. But if you have your shirt and want to take a selfie and send it to us to be a part of the Rogues Gallery, you can send it to the Points WhatsApp at 671-797-8255. Now, usually this is Friday, and we usually play the public testimony of then citizen Lou Leon Guerrero. But right now, we have Dr. Akimoto on the line, who wants to tell us a little bit about Simon Sanchez High School. Good afternoon, Doc. What say you?
Hey, good afternoon, and great to hear you're on the air.
Oh,
and
thank
I
you.
got confused. I didn't know the proper order of things, and so it's great that you have such a high-powered producer there, Daryl.
Daryl's great.
He's very polite. He's doing a great job. But as the host of the most important talk show on Guam, I need to direct this, question towards you, because I just made a discovery that's troubling me. But it's very appropriate that the producer chose the 1812 Overture, which apparently was done in honor of, the Russian victory over Napoleon.
Oh, okay.
When he tried to invade Moscow. Yeah, again, I'm just reading off of Wikipedia while we're talking, so I didn't know this off the top of my head, but it's a very dynamic and very rambunctious song or thing, celebrating that basically, Napoleon's army basically tore down everything, made a big mess, and it was only defeated, I think, by the winter. And so that might be the same thing happening to the Russians as they go into Ukraine. And maybe the same thing that happens as people try to deal with this election, while Simon Sanchez High School remains 99% apparently unfinished in terms of its planning. They were planning to fix it. Apparently, the Democrats, who I guess your producer champions, was planning to fix Simon Sanchez High School sometime over the last 4 years, and they only got the plan to do it 99% done. If you remember that conversation
right
we had with Francis Santos.
That was fiery.
It was fiery, and it also was unfinished, right? Because shortly after that, there was a pretty big earthquake that caused the concrete in the building next door, FB Leon Guerrero, to not fall on a bunch of little children or teachers. That was nice.
Oh, wow.
But
I didn't hear about that.
Surprised.
Yeah, I didn't hear about that.
Well, okay. Well, good.
Yes.
Breaking news. That was like 4 weeks ago. But that was the reason, ultimately, I believe, that FB Leon Guerrero, and then for other reasons, the school down south, you know the name, what is it?
Oceanview, yeah.
They were both shut down.
Oh.
You remember that, just this past week, because of structural and public health issues. Public health shut down the schools because they're unsafe for the kids.
Right.
Is this news to you? Okay, I'm glad I'm calling.
Oceanview was, but I did not know about FB at all.
FB Leon Guerrero shut down too, presumably for the safety of the kids. But I went up there this weekend with my children, and they were behaving badly, so I threatened to leave them there. But the thing is, they were all too happy to go to FB Leon Guerrero's side of the house, because the other side was Simon Sanchez High School, where the sharks still swim. That place looks abandoned. That place looks like a haunted house. In fact, my purpose of the call today was really to ask you, but it sounds like maybe you'll have to do a little research. But I'm thinking, in light of the fact that October is just around the corner, and that we're going to celebrate Halloween for the first time face-to-face, I think instead of planning to fix Simon Sanchez High School, they might just as well give up, because it doesn't look like it's ever going to happen, because they want to build a $1 billion hospital medical complex first. So leave Simon Sanchez High School the way it is, because apparently public health didn't condemn it like it condemned FB Leon Guerrero. And I guarantee you that place doesn't look like it shouldn't be condemned, but since it wasn't, it might function as a very good haunted house on October 31st, and we could raise some money, I'm very serious, for, you know, some of the sports teams that want to buy some uniforms, or maybe to fix George Washington High School's gymnasium, which was shut down at the beginning of the year. There's a lot of things that have been shut down at DOE.
Some of the rooms could have the ghost of legislations passed.
Well, that, and also all the students that have protested or demanded that Simon Sanchez be fixed, they're, you know, probably going to be going to the PTA meetings now for their freshmen or sophomores, because it's been that long. But yeah, the not so funny joke is that Halloween's coming around, and we need a haunted house to kind of use to commemorate the horrors of the last 4 years of pandemic, and apparently abandonment by the Democratic leadership to fixing these schools when they had the time. They had literally 2.5 years where there were no kids in the school. There were a lot of people sitting at home eating bonbons, collecting paychecks, that could have gone and fixed the schools. I mean, a lot of people stayed home for almost a year and a half.
And construction was exempted.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing.
True.
What is their ridiculous excuse for not at least cutting the grass? I mean, because some of that grass hasn't been cut in like 4 years. They cut the part where it's easy, but they always leave the tongans that are growing through the fence line because it's too hard. Again, the fire that I'm trying to permeate this conversation with is, it is beyond despicable that Simon Sanchez High School looks that bad, and their plan to fix it is only 99% done. They're going to blame the pandemic. They're going to blame the war in Ukraine. They're going to blame the 1812 overture. But there really can't be much legitimate excuse.
That was about a month ago that Francis Santos was on the air with Ray Gibson talking about the 99%. 99%.
Dude, it was the
done.
day. It was Friday. It was the day before the election. He announced it the day before
the primary. That's right. And now a month later, almost a month later.
Plan.
Yeah.
No plan, but he's been busy. I mean, he's been having to deal with a lot of issues, and he's just acting. I mean, you know, he's an actor, so he's not really a superintendent, and probably doesn't want to play one on television. That's not an easy job. And we thought the last guy was doing a good job, but honestly, this is his fault. This is John Fernandez's fault. I mean, the buildings falling apart on Francis Santos's watch are barely Mr. Santos's fault alone, although he was a member of apparently the Board of Education, so he can't be spared the criticism. But indeed, John Fernandez walked through Simon Sanchez High School, and there are plenty of pictures of him promising to fix the school on the internet. So he must accept responsibility. I have no idea how they keep letting Simon Sanchez High School be this bad. But maybe, again, it's not that's not such a bad thing, because what is it? Adversity doesn't create character, it reveals it. So this is just, Simon Sanchez High School is the school of adversity. It does seem like it's producing a lot of excellent students. I mean, the kids come to our clinic, their families come to our clinic, they're wonderful people, and these kids are tough. I mean, they are ghetto in the best possible way. They don't feel any burden of having to survive in the jungle, right? These guys know, these are the original Romans, right? They can do what needs to be done because they're doing it up at Simon Sanchez High School for the last 4 years. When they graduate with definite street credibility, jungle credibility, and that's worth something.
And they're really well versed in how well government serves the people.
Yeah, that's the thing. Their political science education, social studies education is in their face, right? Because politicians routinely come up there to lie to them, and they can see it because they keep saying it's going to get fixed, it's going to get fixed, and then they don't shut them down when an earthquake happens. They shut the school next door down, FB Leon Guerrero, which looks 10 times better on the outside than Simon Sanchez high school looks like on any given day of the week. But before I bore you with my ranting, because nobody cares, except the people in Jigo, Simon Sanchez High School is a health hazard, just to be crystal clear. As a medical doctor, I think it's unhealthy for children and staff members to continue to go into a school that is physically connected to another school, which has been condemned by the Department of Public Health. I just don't see the connection. But there was some, I think, overarching moral lesson. Yes, I remember. A video was sent out by the Simon Sanchez students themselves earlier this week. Apparently they have some very clever videography students. And in the end of it, they interview one of their teachers who really looks like, I don't even know his name, but he looks inspirational. He looks like the 2022 version of Welcome Back, Kotter. I don't know if we're dating you.
No, I watched it. I watched it as a kid. Yep.
Did you really?
Yes, I did.
Like 3 years old.
Horseshack.
Yeah, okay.
Barbarino.
I believe you. But I mean, so they got one of the cool teachers who's there for the right reasons, right? And that's the other really miracle of Simon Sanchez is the amount of staff people who stay there year after year, even though when they drive their cars up there, I mean, they're literally driving it into a place.
A lot of the staff are alumni, and that's a good testament also to that school, especially the administrative staff.
Right. And I mean, God bless them because they're not doing it for the, I mean, of course they're doing it for the money. I mean, they need the money, but they could earn money at Hookadoo or JFK and not get their hands dirty.
There's a lot of loyalty there. Yep.
There's love, I think, and then
love, that's right.
At the end of that video is they say we're ghetto and we love it, something like that. The Simon Sanchez community has taken a negative and turned it into a positive, and I think that's the metaphor for Guam, right? I mean, whatever crap is thrown our way, whatever
we adapt.
Failures that our leaders, manifest upon us, like the Simon Sanchez student body and their greater community, we take that manure and we turn it into, help me, Joe.
Fertilizer.
Fertilizer, right.
We grow new growth from the manure. There you go.
Okay, I'm done now.
That's right. Thanks.
Play a good song now.
All right. Thanks for the call, Doc. And insight also. Yeah, that is. There is a lot of manure. We do adapt here on Guam. The testament to that is our family members, our ancestors, our Manumco, who were resilient during World War II and have survived for an island that was wrought with war the way that it was at the time. And for me, I wasn't raised here on Guam, but every time I came here, you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't know that this island was injured so greatly by something so horrific as the Japanese occupation unless you really dug deep into the stories, But I had my grandfather on my dad's side wasn't here on the island, but my grandmother was. He's another story, but he was on a naval ship at the time. But my dad's side of the family, and he was just a toddler, I think, when the war was still going on, it was just about the end. The stories from my aunties are pretty horrific. Some of the stuff they recall, but they moved on and adapted. And I guess that's what happens here on the island. Simon Sanchez has been in disrepair, I hear, from since the 80s.
Well, my dad was a teacher there for 7 years back in the 90s.
Okay.
And I had occasion to visit his classroom. I was appalled. He had a day when water had leaked through the roof, and without any warning, the ceiling started to fall in, totally soaking the students in his class, but nobody got hurt. But they could have had a broken neck from the stuff falling out of the ceiling. But just bucketfuls of water all of a sudden in the middle of one of his classes, and mold up underneath all of the
that I think is one of the most dangerous things there.
Well, they closed down the public health main facility because they couldn't keep up with the mold. And they couldn't economically retrofit the building. And Sanchez has been in this condition, and it's been repaired just to get it to where they could build another school. And replace it. And that was before Teason was built. I mean, we're talking about...
That's not even new either,
Right, and as long as Teason's been around, they've been talking about Teason possibly being a place where they could divert the students from Sanchez while they're building the school. And we're still looking at this. We're still looking at it.
But see, this is the thing about Guam, and we are resilient, we adapt, but we don't forget, and we still feel the pain. And Simon Sanchez alumni, they most likely have their children going there too. And not only are they feeling their pain, they're beginning to incubate, I won't say rage, but really righteous anger.
It's campaign time.
Yeah, I mean, it is campaign time. We heard about it a month ago, but come on, people, do something about this.
Time to vote.
This school.
Especially alumni.
Right. All right. But thank you for calling in, Doc, and reminding us that it's been that long since we heard from the acting superintendent. We know this is not on his shoulders, but he did make a promise, and he was a little bit indignant when he did call. And maybe it was because Ray was casting him a little bit. But let's change directions a little bit here and get to Frenchie, who wanted to call back and talk about immigration, Russian immigration. Is that what you're going to talk about?
Yeah, well, the article. But I'm glad Dr. Akimoto called and that he has not been silenced by the retaliation done against him and Dr. Nguyen by the Red Queen.
Right.
So I'm not going to go into details, but they know what we're talking about.
Exactly.
And a quick word about the article from Lust about the rent and housing issue. It sounds typically of a solution looking for a problem. And if you really look the problem of housing, if you compare us to Hawaii, the mainland, or even Japan, the rents are pretty much on target. The problem is not the rents. It's the low salaries that people are paid here on Guam, which is about 40% below the rates of what you could be paid in the U.S. So it's a different issue, but he's probably looking to make hay about something during the election period. So regarding the article on the immigration and the flight of Russians out of Russia, we have to be extremely careful about anything regarding Ukraine and Russia right now since February or even before, since 2014. There is a huge amount of propaganda, which is, it's really a red rice issue. It's more about the narrative and the reality of the issues. And this is a typical example. For the last week and a half, as soon as Putin declared the referendum in the Donbass republics, Zaporizhia and Kherson, the only thing the American press has been talking about was, besides the fact that they say it would be, they would not recognize those referendums, it was about the 300,000 the call for reserves to come in on board for the war. And it's totally misunderstood. And actually, Putin is not calling for a new class of draftees like we've been told, but he's calling reserve. Now, you have to understand that the reserve in the Soviet armed forces totals 25 million men. So he's calling 300,000 reserve, and it's because he's going to bring troops that are right now on the eastern territories and so on that are ready to fight, and he has to put other troops in place so that their borders are secure. So it's not really going to impact any students or anything, but it's a great opportunity for U.S. propaganda to say, haha, see, they are in trouble, and so on and so forth. So we have to be very careful about that. Now, there is something that you mentioned, which was the U.S. State Department a few days ago, last week, called for all U.S. citizens residing in Russia to leave as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually 3 days before the explosion of the Nord Stream 1 and 2.
Oh.
And at the same time that the State Department made that call to leave Russia, which the Russians have seen as a fear by the U.S. government that Russia would retaliate because of something bad happening.
Oh.
And which is the way that a lot of Europeans are looking at it. And what happened at the same time was that the CIA sent a direct note to Chancellor Schultz, who is the Chancellor of the German government, warning him that Russia might attack Nord Stream, which doesn't make sense because they own the place.
Right.
So the only thing they need to do if they want to shut the pipeline is they just need to shut the taps on the Russian side, and then no more gas comes in. So it doesn't make any sense. It's not logical at all. And we know that President Biden had swear to journalists that Nord Stream would not go online no matter what action the U.S. might take. And Ambassador Nuland, the infamous ambassador, testified in front of the Congress 3 weeks ago that Nord Stream will not go online no matter what. And we know that we had the U.S. Navy had deployed naval drone on a small island owned by the Danes right in that corridor. So, and the Swiss have even pinpointed the flight paths of naval helicopters along the Nord Stream area. So right now, everybody except Washington, D.C. is pointing the finger at the U.S. And I think it's probably why there was that call to leave Russian territory. But so we'll see. I mean, there is a lot of questions up in the air. But we have been told that there were kilometers-long lines of people trying to leave Russia. The Indian TV has gone to all the cross borders with their TV crews, and they have a hard time finding 20 people waiting in line. So it's, again, most likely propaganda. Now, there has been quite a bit of Russian leaving, and they are mostly Russian Jews going to Israel since the beginning of the conflict. And actually, the largest number of Jews leaving the region is from Ukraine and from the Odessa region, which so far has not been engulfed by the conflict, but I guess they see the writing on the wall, you could say. But otherwise, very few people are leaving Russia. So we have to be very cautious about what is happening.
Well, I don't know if this puts it into context a little bit. What I read was coming from the Boston Herald, and I know they did take a dig at Biden and his border policy or lack of policy. But I hear what you're saying about the narrative coming out.
In Boston, they are still pissed off that they had to send the National Guards on
to Martha's Vineyard.
on the vineyard and take the Venezuelan refugee to Cape Cod.
The
on
50
military
refugees,
base.
right?
Yeah, so now we have Guantanamo and Cape Cod to keep people that bothers the liberal crowds. But I would advise everybody that reads any of those stories, be very cautious, crisscross your references, because
grain of salt.
They are, and it's a conflict basically between the U.S. and Russia, with the Ukrainians being the proxy. But we'll probably see a lot of movement this winter with now the Germans have been very foolish in closing all their nuclear plants, producing electricity. They came up with all kind of kooky projects like wave generating electricities and stuff like that that do not work and that are not online and that cost billions of dollars. The Germans have had their green economy plan for a long time, and they actually reopening coal plants. The German people are lining up at the Polish border to go and buy coal so they can warm themselves up this winter.
Sounds like Hawaii.
So and the internet in Europe right now is on fire. The governments are very quiet, except for the Polish foreign minister that declared on TV, "Thank you, President Biden, for attacking the Nord Stream." Then the prime minister has to say, "Well, it's a misunderstanding." But all the governments are pretty quiet right now, except for the internet, who is buzzing and people are really pissed.
Well, Frenchie, it might be just a fact that President Biden has no idea what's going on.
It's probably true, but at least Susan Rice should know.
Right.
She's the puppet master, so she should know.
Biden's still looking for senators who have already passed away to see if they've RSVP'd his invitations.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty bad. But I think it was, if there was a reason for D.C. to do that, and it'll probably never be proven because, of course, we're going to deny it. But if there was anything, is that Chancellor Scholz actually was starting to not agree with Washington, D.C. He had refused to sell Leopard tanks to the Ukrainians. He basically said, "No, I can't. I don't have any in reserve, and I need to worry about Germany." And I think it's a huge shot across the bow of the German ships to say, stay in line and everything. But now Germans are saying the Americans are trying to destroy our economy. So I don't know. We'll see this winter. It's going to be very interesting to watch.
Right.
There will be a lot of hurt in Europe, and we could see some government change like we just seen in Italy and in Sweden.
Yeah. And they're huge changes. They're pendulum swings, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I want to delve into that after the weekend because I'm very interested in this new. Is it a prime minister for Italy? And understand
Giorgia Meloni.
Yeah, and I understand they're of the ad hominem calling her fascist, but there are some connections in a sort of way. But it's not it's not the way that we think of it, and I think that needs to be understood. But Frenchie, we need to go to the bottom of the hour, the seventh inning stretch. I thank you for calling back. And
I'm finishing an article on Meloni, and that studies exactly who she is and what she, and I'll have it on Out from the Jungle probably tonight.
Oh, very cool. I'll be looking forward to that.
Not Jungle Watch, but Out from the Jungle.
Okay,
yeah.
Very good.
You can find it. It will be about her and her party.
Okay, very good.
All right.
Well, thanks for calling in and have a great weekend, Frenchie.
You're most welcome, and you too.
All right. We're going to go to a break, but before that, I saw Ken LG was on the line. If you can, call back, Ken. I'm interested to hear your perspective on Sanchez and FB. We're going to the seventh inning stretch. We'll return with more Tall Tales. My name is Jose Martinez. Don't go away.
It's back. Sunday, October 2nd, the Guam Army National Guard presents the GSPN Imas Metgood Strongman Competition. Come to the Paseo grounds and find out who will be the 2022 Strongest Man and Strongest Woman. Can Big Gonzalez and Brittany Pareda defend their titles? Watch the strongest on island take on the Pacific Unlimited Outrigger Lift, the Pacific Tire CTD Tire Flip, ITNE's Pro Pull, the Michelob Ultra Keg Toss, and Paradise Fitness's Tombstone Walk. And you got to be there for the Triple J Truck Pull. Food and drinks will be on sale. All proceeds means going to the Tasa Canoe Builders, the GSPN Imas Met Good competition, Sunday, October 2nd, starting at noon. Special thanks to the stations of choice broadcasting. That's Boss 104, Star 101, and The Point.
Happy day. This is Claire Manglania from Security Title. A power of attorney can be a useful tool in a real estate transaction, but if abused, it can result in devastating loss. Choosing your representative should be done with the utmost care and should be very specific about the powers being granted. To mitigate loss, the team at Security Title confirms with the owner prior to using a power of attorney to sell the property. Each transaction is unique. Let the professionals at Security Title use our experience to facilitate a secure closing. We are here to help.
Seventh inning here on Tall Tales. It means we're at the bottom of the hour, the last hour before the weekend. It is Friday. Who was sitting for a while at Wrigley Field in the green area, Ken LG. Thanks for holding on. I know Frenchie gives a lot, and I'd like to hear everything that he has to say, but I really appreciate you calling back, Ken.
Yeah, I apologize for dropping off, but I was getting phone calls. I guess the legislature held a vote on 1136, and apparently it failed again.
Oh, okay. Thanks for that update. I was texting people that I know of it also, and they were still in session when I was asking the question, and I would love to see that voting sheet.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to get that voting sheet as well and see what I can do with it. But, it just reconfirms that, we have a large contingent of public officials that go down on bended knee, and, they bow to Adelup every chance they get. And the people of Guam are going to continue to suffer as long as that happens.
And now just real quick, and just allow me to explain a little to people who might not remember Bill 11. It was a bill to have the legislature vote on the extension of a health emergency after 90 days of executive
extension.
As opposed to the resolution which would have ended a health emergency right then and there, which is already part of the law. This would have been a better alternative than one that's already written in the law. However, I don't think those who voted against the override of the veto understand what the public is looking at right now. Are we actually seeing first responders still getting that differential pay because there's a health emergency going on? Is that still going on also?
I don't think so.
I hope not, because it would certainly be justified, right?
Yeah. A lot of things would be justified under this public health emergency. But how can we have a public health emergency when the administration is holding rallies almost nightly, and
we had a parade,
big rallies and parades and motorcades, and how can we be in a public health emergency? And I was listening to Ray this morning, reading the letter from Josh justifying the public health emergency, and it was all, bullpucky. You know? Nothing in that letter justified the extension of the public health emergency, because I forget what the numbers. I think maybe 13 states have a food security emergency that allows them to continue to do the food stamps, which was the biggest reason why we're in this emergency, so that we can continue.
It created crisis.
Yeah. Well, I know I got off topic, and I apologize.
That's quite all right.
I just wanted to point out that when we spent $250 million to buy TGen, part of the justification was that we would be able to use part of the facilities to relocate students as we went on this big system-wide overhaul. Remember, they had the students from Antolon there while they were, repairing Antolon and doing the renovations there. And I forget, there was one other school I think that they did it with, that they moved the students there while they were doing critically needed repairs for about 4 months or 5 months.
I don't recall.
And that was the whole justification, because with this facility, this would be the secure, safe housing of our students while we rotated repairs and maintenance and upgrade through the entire DOE system. And then didn't just recently the administration authorize one of the charter schools to move into that facility because they were being evicted for non-payment or something like that? It seems to me that happened, which means that now we no longer have a facility to move students to so that we can safely, quickly, and efficiently renovate and repair and upgrade buildings to 21st century education standards and needs.
Well, we always can look at a picture of a hospital.
Maybe what
distract all of us.
Yeah, maybe we're going to do, that $50 million tribute to the Asian visitor they're going to build down there in Tumon.
Oh, is that the one with the proa as a roof?
Yeah, proa roof. We know how well that the roofs at the museum are working.
And we all know how well GovGuam builds depictions of canoes. They can't get the seal right over there at the Great Seal Park. That's my rant. I don't know if you've heard about that before, but they had a chance to correct it, and they built a canoe that can't function for everybody to see.
And they want to dig up EPOW, the grounds at EPOW, which are burial grounds, to put the footings in for this big building.
Oh, that's right. Maybe they'll find some more. I think there was a canoe found there, too.
Well, it means that they're going to have to pay a lot for archaeology.
So, Ken, do you know more about Simon Sanchez? Was that put on hold again after the big pronouncement of the 99% completed?
I don't know. I don't even think we're at the 99% completion of the planning stage yet.
Oh.
Because as I recall, the planning stage was supposed to cost something like $5 million to do the A&E, and they only got $2.5 million.
Huh.
So I don't see how they can even be at the $5 million. I don't recall any planning meetings in the community, which was supposed to be part of the process, because I remember the uproar when in the previous administration that they had all these planning meetings and they created a design, they put the design out to bid, and the winning contractor with the highest ticket price submitted a revised proposal that was about 80% smaller, and instead of having a gymnasium and an auditorium and a lunchroom, they combined all three into one room so that you would have a multi-purpose room that was supposed to be an auditorium, a gym, and a lunchroom. And the classrooms were 20% smaller, but the price tag was $20 million over the number 2 bid.
Wow.
I mean, the winning bid, this was $20 million over the low bid. And they still got it. And that's when this whole thing blew up. And that's when I went on the rampage and I was trying to introduce legislation to close all the loopholes that allowed that to happen. Because the way the law was written, and it was written so badly that I couldn't get the speaker then, who was Judy Wonpat, and the author of the bill, to try to close it. So I introduced legislation through petition. She took it to Elizabeth Anderson, and Elizabeth Anderson wrote her a letter, said, a citizen may petition you, but a government official is not required to act on the petition. and so basically what she was saying, tell Ken Leon Grow to go pound sand, And my petition was very, very, very conservative. All I wanted to do was to close the loophole that allowed the mixed martial arts fighting firm based in Manila that won the contract to jump it from the $70 million to a cost of $160 million. I wanted to close the loophole that eliminated a requirement that a licensed contractor with 60 months or more of verifiable experience building large government projects they wouldn't entertain that idea. And the other idea that was so horrible that they wouldn't entertain was require that the contractor be bonded with government of Guam, the beneficiary of the bond. They thought that was horrible. How could you expect a mixed martial arts firm based in Manila that had only been in business for 1 year to have the ability to get a bond for $160 million and indemnify the government of Guam if something goes wrong?
You know what? Without even knowing the facts that you're stating or the numbers that you're stating, I'm going back to the fact that a legislator, an elected official who is a part of the branch that represents the people of the island, had to get legal counsel to find out if they had to listen to you or not?
Executive branch legal counsel.
Oh, executive branch legal counsel.
Yeah,
what is going on with our elected officials here on Guam? You better be listening, whether you agree or not, whether you put it out or not. You don't need to get counsel to tell you whether you need to listen or not. It's an ought to listen.
Yeah.
It's an ought to. And whether you didn't agree with the numbers, work on something, because there's an issue here, a discrepancy that we see. And as an elected representative official, elected politician, you better be listening to us. That's hilarious. I wish I knew it back then. I would have been mocking that left and right.
Well, that's where I met Andre Bynum and his students who were in the process of, lobbying the legislature for funds to rebuild Simon Sanchez. That's where my relationship with Andre Bynum began.
Yeah.
And it was a very rewarding experience seeing how passionate these students were about trying to lobby government officials in the legislature, because they knew they were not going to benefit from this, but they were thinking of future sharks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what just made my heart, soar. That here we had a group of students who knew they would not benefit from the work they were doing. They knew beyond all shadow of doubt, but they were thinking of future generations of sharks who would benefit from them.
Wow.
And that's why I can't wait to see that generation of Simon Sanchez students begin to move into positions of
They're
power
voters
and authority.
now. I'm sure they are past the age of 18, past the age of registering to vote. So I hope they go out to vote. Ken, I want to thank you for calling back and bringing us to Churchill Downs. It's that time. We're going to head out for the end of the show, but thanks for the update, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great weekend. You're listening to Tall Tales on KOSG 93.3 FM, The Point. We're going to head to Churchill Downs. Don't go away. We'll be right back for the last few minutes of the program.
Tell me about it, stud.
Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Festival is back on Saturday, October 22nd. We rockin' and rollin' at the Dusatani Guam Resort from 2 to 10 p.m. Bring your friends and come dressed in your best grease costume to win up to $500 in cash and prizes. So bust out those leather jackets and 50-style outfits as we party the night away at Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Fest. Don't be a square. Get your tickets now at craftbeerfestguam.com or cruise on by any 76 Circle K location. Now that's cool, baby.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarty Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Churchill Downs, the home stretch. We're going to be saying goodbye for this week, saying hello to the weekend, 2 days without Tall Tales. But we will be back on Monday. I hope not to repeat last Monday where my voice was gone. But, yeah, it's been a very challenging week in getting out to you some of my mindset, my thoughts and perspectives, pouring through daily periodicals. And I want to thank all of you guys for tuning in. In the green room, we have Bistra candidate, Bistra Mendiola, who I kind of reached out to a little bit because I saw you come on. Good afternoon, Bistra.
Hi, good afternoon.
You know, you did give some insight on what's going on in the Ukraine early on when you were talking to Bob Klitzkie. Was it about the beginning of the year, right? Right before or right around the time that tensions were mounting?
Yeah. I mean, my father actually spent a few years over there as a Bulgarian, visiting the Bulgarian diaspora, and he got caught up exactly in the beginning of the military conflict in 2014. I was really scared for him, but thank God, he made it out. But I just wanted to touch on the one question you kind of asked earlier. What's the difference between Nikita Khrushchev, we call him in Russian, and our accent, Khrushchev, and then and Putin. Putin, yes. There's huge difference and quite a few similarities, believe it or not. The difference is Mr. Khrushchev kind of self-installed himself as the leader, the dear leader, back in the day because he was able to kind of emerge victorious after a battle when Stalin died. There was, politics going on over there, and he was able to kind of become the first secretary of the party central committee. I think that was in the 50s. The one thing, though, that defines the two people, one got semi-self-installed, Putin was elected. So that's the big difference. There's quite a few differences in the era we're talking about. And then the philosophy, though, the philosophy of both is basically glory to Mother Russia. So that needs to be placed in the first front because what I'm seeing as a third-party bystander here is we are bombarded with propaganda on both sides, right? And we need to come in the middle and see things in a different perspective as basically witnesses of what's happening and kind of not be so biased, and that's my perspective. What's happening in Russia right now and between Russia and Ukraine is, I think it's predominantly an ethnic conflict versus everything else. Because in 2014, there were quite a few atrocities that were performed, against the Russian population in Donbass as well, and vice versa. So one thing leads to the other, and there we go. We have a big, huge conflict that kind of affects us as well, although we're thousands of miles away. Don't you just love it when someone dodos over there and we smell it? Right? But that's how the global economy works, and unfortunately, no, we're slave to it. So when we talk about Russia and Ukraine, we always need to take it with grain of salt because we're truly bombarded with the left and the right and so forth. But Putin, in my mind, is someone that is the old school, glory to Mother Russia, someone that doesn't want to let go of the old way of things, how things were really conservative, and believe it or not, he is a conservative. He's also a populist in my mind, and I'm not a professional political advisor nor a commentary person, but from my perspective, he does want to kind of keep things away. And what's happening right now with all the protesting that's happening in Moscow and St. Petersburg, we're seeing the youngsters who want to be in line with the West. They're the ones that are protesting. But if you go into rural Russia, that is not the case. Even if a Russian doesn't primarily support Putin as a leader, they're still proud to be Russians. That's kind of that sense of identity, who they are.
Right.
And they will defend exactly that. Doesn't that sound familiar?
Very familiar.
Very correct.
Right.
So when we talk about Russia and Ukraine, we always need to take all the different facets of the problem and remember that we're talking about the real people on the ground again. People that they're also torn apart because there are a lot of Russians who have Ukrainian families and vice versa. And I know many people on both sides, and they don't necessarily hate each other, but they're just separated by politics, really. And unfortunately for them and for us, we're suffering the consequences.
Right, and I don't know if you heard, I was reading a column by Peggy Noonan, and she was recalling the Cuban Missile Crisis. And in it, she talked about a speech that President John F. Kennedy had read, and he talked about, I'm just going to repeat it right here. He said, to believe peace is impossible is to believe war inevitable, and if that is so, then mankind is doomed. We do not need to accept that view. No government is so evil that its people must be considered as lacking in every virtue. America and Soviet Union are almost unique among the major world powers, as we've never been at war with each other. And I think what he was saying is that there are world leaders, there are perspectives, but there's also citizens involved, people who are probably just like all of us. We have differences in language and a little bit of culture, but we're still trying to do the same thing that everybody else doing in the world, and that's to live.
People. We strive for the same things. We want to love. We want to make sure that our families are fed. We want to send our children to school. You know, we want peace. Nobody wants war. I mean, you go even in the most Taliban place over there in Afghanistan, they tell the same thing. I'm absolutely 100%, if not 1,000% certain.
Right.
Every
You'll
human
find
being,
those. Yeah.
every human being wants to prosper. Nobody wants to suffer.
Right.
It's just that we're the victim of who.
Well, Priester, I really appreciate you calling in, and it's good to hear from you. I'm really glad that I got to meet you briefly when you came in here to the studio that one day, but hopefully we'll hear from you again soon. Have a great weekend.
Absolutely. I look forward to that. You have a great weekend, Jose, and team, and Familia Point.
There you go. Thank you very much. And it's time to say goodbye to our dear leader. So let's say, without further ado, let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagatna, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Barrels toward South Carolina. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Spinning toward an expected landfall this afternoon near Charleston. South Carolina's Governor Henry McMaster warning residents to be ready.
I want to urge everyone in our state to take a look at those maps, to pay attention, to see what is going to happen in your area. Some will have more wind than others. Some will have more rain than others.
President Biden has approved South Carolina's request for a federal emergency declaration. Ian's sustained winds at 85 miles an hour. In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis not yet ready to confirm the number of people who've been killed by the storm.
We absolutely expect to have mortality from this hurricane, but I would just caution people, there's a process by where that is confirmed, and there's people, I know that people have said certain things. In terms of confirmed, that will be made apparent over the coming days.
There are 2 confirmed deaths on Sanibel Island, one in central Florida, another closer to the state's east coast. Rescue efforts continue in southwest Florida.
We have heard the buzz of Coast Guard helicopters throughout the day performing rescues here. You have to get to some of these areas by boat because the bridges and roads have been washed away. As a matter of fact, I'm standing next to a canal that was created under the storm surge and the force here, making waterways where before there were none, washing away people's homes completely. And they've had the diligent and very dangerous work of trying to go into what's left of some of these structures to check for survivors.
Fox's Will Nunley in Cape Coral, Florida. The House is set to vote today on a bill to extend government spending authority into the next fiscal year, which begins at midnight. A federal judge has overruled the special master appointed to oversee the documents seized in the Mar-a-Lago raid, ruling that attorneys for former President Trump do not have to say for the record if they believe the government's inventory of the evidence is accurate and complete. America is listening to Fox News.
Connect to Fox News Audio on the Fox News app. Listen to hear your favorite hosts like Brian Kilmeade, Jimmy Fallon, and Guy Benson standing up for what's right, live and via podcast.